Okay, well, welcome to our sketch to story drawing workshop. This is workshop number 2. So let's go over our mission at Sankofa Animation Network. Sankofa Animation Network exists to uplift Black and Brown communities through animated film, faith-centered storytelling, and creative education, building a global community where underrepresented voices are nurtured, empowered, and seen. Okay, and our African proverb for today is he who learns teaches. I really like that one. Sometimes you hear the saying, which is not a proverb, like those who can't do teach, but this is much more of a positive. Like it's not about not doing, but actually the process of learning to do enables you to be able to teach. So I love this one. He who learns teaches. So I love that. Okay, so Sketch the Story workshops week 2. Today our focus is continuing on inspiration with a focus on genre. So last week we looked at folklore and nature as being inspirations, and today we're looking at genre. So, what is genre? Genre is a category or classification of artistic, literary, or musical compositions characterized by specific styles, forms, or content. It's derived from the French word or for kind or type, which actually is les genres. It's not French, but it sounds something like that. And genres help creators organize works and help audiences navigate what they read, watch, or listen to. For film and television, it's categorized by mood, setting, narrative structure, including categories like action movies, horror, comedy, and westerns. And I got these definitions from Merriam-Webster and dictionary.com. Okay, so exploring genres, week 2. So, our first set of questions is what genres are you naturally drawn to and why? What genres are you naturally drawn to and why? The alternate question is which genre best reflects your personality? And so, our drawing today is starting with thrillers, and we are doing a very famous scene from Jurassic Park. This one is a thriller. It says, thrillers build suspense through danger, uncertainty, and high stakes situations. So we're gonna take 5-minute pauses and let's look at those questions. Why we sketch, what genres are you naturally drawn to and why, and what genre best reflects your personality. I am definitely drawn to thrillers as we are sketching this right now. Thrillers are exciting. I particularly like um, thrillers with animals or some type of creatures that seem like they will eat the protagonist or, or they are physical, like a physical threat in the sense that it seems out of control. Some of these would be like Jaws, Lake Placid. I don't know if you've ever seen Deep Blue Sea, which is kind of like a 90s or early 2000s version of Jaws. What are some other really good ones that I like? Obviously, the original Jurassic Park was really, really good at doing this, right? I think most people that watch it were basically on your toes for the whole thing. It's exciting. I just like the fact that it's scary, but at the same time, it's like I don't know, there's like it's not overly horror where people aren't dying every second. It feels a little bit more like they're trying to resolve this problem. It seems like they're trying to solve um, something that happened that caused this animal to just go crazy. A really good one is The Ghost in the Darkness. It's actually based on a true story about some lions that went rogue during the construction of the railroads in Kenya. And that's a really, really good one. I highly recommend it. I think that one is also from like late 90s, early 2000s, and it's a super good movie. But that's one movie that I feel really drawn to. Another one I feel drawn to is fantasy. Fantasy movies kind of take you into these different worlds, which I think I love that element of it, the idea of just the escapism into a different world, into a different realm where these mythological creatures exist. And they just kind of are there, and you have to, it's like part of the natural world is having these supernatural elements. I love that. I love the fact that it kind of leads into different types of problems that you wouldn't have in a regular world, in the regular sense of it. So I think that is also a super fun element as well. Um, the genre affects my personality. Ooh, that's a good question. I think one genre that I find that really reflects my personality would be I mean, don't want to just go with like the easy like slice of life. That one feels easy. Maybe there's some drama for sure. Definitely some drama. I think psychological thriller maybe would be also like I always still feel like in the coming of age, even though I'm older coming of age, I still feel like my life has gone through a lot of transitions and just kind of figuring things out, whether it be the hard way or the harder way. So definitely that feels like those also fit. Let's see. And are we at almost, well, I'm still have actually have a lot of time here to draw this. Actually, I'm surprised that I got this much in this little bit of time. But I think we can talk more about thrillers and the idea of thrillers. One thing that I would suggest is looking at the angles that they use. I like to talk about cinematic angles and the types of shots that are here and the types of shots that you'll see. Uh, with this like the main character in this scene being that little boy, and he's so small in comparison to the rest of the entire image. And also look how big these, and kind of overwhelming these dinosaurs are depicted in the scene. They're so much bigger than him. They're taking up most of the frame. This one in the center is really, he starts in the front and his tail literally goes all the way past the edge of the scene. So we're seeing that the threat is huge. The threat is significant. And the colors are a really huge part of genre too, because the colors give us those feelings. I mean, let's not even get into music. We're just dealing with the visuals here. Obviously, the sound that are happening is going to have a huge part of it. But just looking at the visuals, the way that the dinosaurs are taking up that scene, and the colors that they're using, which really kind of feels eerie, you know. All right. We're going on to our next one. So, how else can we talk about genres in terms of thriller? So, when you look at this scene, obviously, this is a scene that's supposed to incite certain types of feelings, right? This is a scene that incites, like, oh crap, like this guy is a fool, first of all. He looks very foolish, because he is obviously, again, minimal size in the scene. He's very, very small in comparison to the rest of the frame, and very, very small in comparison to the threat at hand. And the dinosaur is this one is the T-Rex, and it's so, so much bigger than he is. Obviously, it looks like he's in some big trouble here. And this look of intensity. That's, I think, too, why I love these thrillers with animals, because it's just such that raw hunting posture, and that threat of like there's no humanity in this creature. Obviously, this creature does not have any type of empathy. He's only thinking I think that's what really makes the animal horrors a little bit more scary, because you're not dealing with a human. You're dealing with like a wild, archaic, in this instance, animal who has no empathy for you at all and will just have absolutely no guilt in killing you. And I think too that's why I like when I do watch a horror movie, it's kind of fun to see when they give the uh the villain, the antagonist, those same qualities like in a Michael Myers. He's not really human in a sense. He's like got this animalistic side to him where he just doesn't have any empathy and he doesn't have any care. And I think that makes horror movies even more scary when they create the antagonist in that way. All right, so let's see. And I just think that Jeff Goldblum did such a good job in this in this film. And you can use like take uh these types of images, these types of shots, you can learn from them because you can use these same types of shots in your own stories. Like if you're telling even a completely different story, if this was like, say this was you say you're making your own thriller movie and you're trying to figure, or your own animated short and it's a thriller. You can get inspiration from a shot like this. Like make your villain, make your antagonist look larger than life. You can do that with a human too, just by changing the camera angle to have the frame, let them taking up most of the frame. You can have your protagonist in a certain either they're like down in a hole or something. Like let's say one movie that comes to mind is like um Apocalypto. And I don't know if they necessarily had this shot, but you could do a shot like this. You could have like your antagonist be very big and kind of looking down. And you might have like this little hole. I remember there was like two characters that were in a hole and they were stuck there. And so you can use these same sort of tactics, even though you're doing a different medium, even though you're doing a different story, but you're using those same the techniques of that genre to tell the story. So you see now the antagonist taking up most of the frame, and then the protagonist or the secondary characters that are friends of the protagonist look very, very small in that frame. Okay, so let's continue on in this image here and the lighting. Look at this intense lighting. The lighting is going like directly the onto the T-Rex here, and we just have this little tiny light that he has. It's definitely guiding your eye, but it's like also kind of like symbolic of he's like this little light, and then he's like a big light. He's like this little thing, and then the T-Rex is like, yeah, I'm a much bigger problem than you are. I'm a much bigger threat than you are. I have the spotlight, and you have this little itty bitty key light. This itty bitty light that you have is nothing compared to what I have over here. So, also, it's good to look at the other things that are showing signs in the shot, like these broken cables. That's really cool the way that they did that. They showed these like cables are broken, they like are hanging down. It just shows that this thing is powerful. I mean, that's basically what they're saying. This is a powerful creature who can break down a giant electric fence. You little mushy human is really not going to be any sort of a threat at all to this creature because it can easily take down an offense that's a lot stronger than you are. So I think that's a really good way that they show the power, who has the power in this scene. Okay, so we're gonna go into our next genre. And our next genre is sci-fi. Oh, sci-fi. I am actually more of a newcomer to sci-fi. And I say that because I do like some sci-fi movies now, but I haven't always been a big rabid fan of sci-fi. I just am more along getting into it now. I just also like watched the whole Star Wars series for the first time just like a few years ago. But I think that sci-fi is also a fun genre to explore. The definition we have is it explores futuristic technology, space, time travel, or imagined scientific possibilities. And so I think that I love the how it allows you to explore your imagination. And that really attracts me to sci-fi because I mean, I'm a fantasy person. So I think in a lot of ways they can intersect. Fantasy is one of my favorite genres. Fantasy is probably my very favorite genre of all, if I'm being very honest. Let's see, maybe I can do this a little bit. It does make it easier when you give yourself a frame to draw in, whether you're using a sketchbook or if you're sketching in a digital platform like Photoshop, Procreate, whatever. It does make it a lot easier when you give yourself a frame to draw in. The frames that you draw in definitely are gives you that limited space where you're not so like caught up in, oh, what do I, where do I start? The composition and the what am I thinking? The perspective. Oh, it gives you a little bit of a clearer space to work, and you don't necessarily have to like start at one particular spot. Like you can start with the background, or you can go right into the character, like I did here. And you can. It gives you a little bit more. Uh, it takes away a little bit of that, you know, where do I start? How much do I need to plan this out? It turns your whole canvas into a thumbnail. I think that's basically the main point of it, of being able to uh, take that entire threatening canvas and turn it into a thumbnail so it's less intimidating, it's more approachable, and you can kind of approach it in without fear or with less fear than you might have otherwise. All right, here we have our protagonist, Luke, with his new mentor. This is from the second Star Wars film. Believe it's still from the 1970s, but it's a good one. I enjoyed this one. Um, so we're just gonna sketch it out. You can do either one or both if we have time in the 5-minute window that we have. So depending on how loose you want to be, you'll probably be able to do both of these images. And I'm just gonna take my time and see how much of this I can get in. And if I can get the second one in that same time period, then I will definitely start sketching the second one as well. But I love the fact that there's these like new aliens. I think one of the things that Star Wars did is it brought in new ideas of aliens that we hadn't thought of before. I think before Star Wars, and there might be, I'm sure there are probably other films maybe or stories that depict these creatures in different ways, but I think it's the first time that myself or and a lot of people really thought of aliens as multiple different species and um like different types of strange animals and talking animals and these critters that just seem like just, unimaginable. Like there's so many different types. And I think that's the first time that we've seen so many different types of aliens. It's certainly the first time that I saw so many different types of aliens. And obviously, a lot of films and books and animations that came after Star Wars, um, you did the same thing, incorporated different types of aliens that, aren't just the little green men with big eyes, but, I think some of them are. Yoda is kind of a little green man with big eyes, and Baby Yoda definitely is a little green man with big eyes. But it's not in the same form that we were used to, in the same concept that we were used to. It's seeing it in a different and a new way, which is pretty fun. I think it's pretty fun. All right, so here is our hero Luke, and he's getting mentored. I don't even think he knows it yet that he's getting trained in very Karate Kid style before Karate Kid. I didn't even realize how much Karate Kid is like Star Wars. It's very similar. So many films have copied Star Wars. It's kind of incredible. All right, let's go on to our next image. Our next one is Han Solo. All right, so we have Han Solo and his uh, fabulous furry pal, Chewbacca, aka Chewie. So let's go ahead and make a little thumbnail frame for Chewbacca and Han Solo. And I picked this image particularly too because I love how normal this scene looks. I love how normal and completely unnormal this scene is. It's like he's just kind of hanging out at the pub. This guy who's like this space pirate guy. And he's just like, they can look, how does that even sound? It's a space pirate. And he's hanging out at a bar with a Bigfoot. An alien Bigfoot. And it's normal. It's very normal. It's casual. They're just kind of looking over and that's it. There's nothing else to it. It's just a very casual scene. He looks kind of like suspicious of whatever he's being told. Like, okay, like who are you? And why should I listen to you? Why should I give you my time? But at the same time, it's like he's just kind of hanging out in the pub. And his friend, he seems like just like they're very casual together, but his friend is also this giant Bigfoot creature. So I love the fact that in sci-fi you make the abnormal feel very normal. I love that. It's like you can do that. You can you can let your imagination run wild, but you have to set it up. And that's one thing that we can talk about that we're going to get into in some future sketch workshops is the idea of worlds. But I think it's important to talk about worlds in this episode because I think it's pretty relevant because when you think about worlds and the idea of a world that has these types of creatures that are abstract to us, you don't want to just introduce them out of nowhere. You don't want them to just come out of the blue and just kind of, you know, be like, what is this thing? You have to kind of set it up from the beginning that this is a world that has strange creatures. So when you think about, Star Wars, even if, Chewbacca is not in one of the first episodes, in one of the first couple of minutes, still within the first couple of minutes, you're going to see some type of strange alien that's different that we know is not in our regular world. We're going to see something that's going to show us within it's in the setup, somewhere in the setup, there needs to be something that shows us that this is not the ordinary, right? This is not the regular. So even in Jurassic Park, in those first couple of minutes, that opening scene, we're seeing, okay, there's these guys and they're cage operators, and one of them gets dragged into the cage by something scary. All right, it's showing us that, something is going on here. This is not a normal animal that we're dealing with. This is something sort of supernatural or something that's super threatening, right? So those are important things to think about, like showing that this is not the normal world. What else? Let me think of another movie that does that. I think a lot of them do that. There's the setup of showing us, oh, in Game of Thrones, like we don't really get into the White Walkers a lot, Um, there's not a whole lot of the story yet when the story first starts out, it's more about these kings and somebody died and he's like, I want you to be my hand and blah blah blah. But that first opening scene, someone dies and because he's seen this creature, this zombie-like creature, and it's a big threat. And it's like, okay, it's like even though I know that we're not gonna necessarily explain them just yet, we have to let people know that this is part of the story so that way that they don't fall out of it and they still believe when we do show them on screen. They're not like, what the hell? Where did this thing come from? So it's like you're showing that mythological things exist in this world and that these abstract creatures are going to be showing up. You don't have to explain it right away, but you need to give a little bit of that foreshadowing so people don't get thrown out of the world when they are introduced. That's one of the things that I did in JD's story actually, because when I was writing it, I had these mythological creatures, and then initially on the first draft, I just had them show up, and I was like, no, I can't. That throws things off. How do I make sure that, this is believable? So I changed it and I put in that first opening scene when the missionaries are driving in and they're looking out of the window, and all of a sudden there's this glowing creature. And they're like, okay, what the heck is that? And that is like the introduction. Okay, there's something going on here that's different, that's abstract and abnormal, and it's being introduced right off the gate so people aren't thrown off when they see it. All right, so we're getting to our second set of questions. So the second set of questions are, how does the genre you love influence the way you draw, paint, or tell stories? The alternate question is, what visual elements immediately tell you what genre you're in? So, what genre you love influences how you draw, paint, or tell stories. All right, so this is one of my favorite categories. It's coming of age. Coming of age. And so, coming of age focuses on a young person's growth, identity, and transition into adulthood. So you don't necessarily have to show that protagonist from a young person going to an adult. They can be anywhere from like a child, maybe 7 or 8 years old, up into teenager, and they're having to learn or they're having to grow in some way, that's learning about themselves, that's discovering their independence, that's dealing with this new portion of life. Really, a lot of it is about dealing with a new portion of life. So. You don't have to show them becoming an adult, but you do have to show them facing something that's challenging them in their personal growth and their identity, and their learning how to become an independent um, person or creature if they're not human. I think in many ways, like the Little Mermaid is coming of age. She's a teenager and she's like learning like, hey, I don't like being in the water. Like I want to be a human. And she's like having to like leave what she knows behind to go after what she really wants. And that's kind of what coming of age is. It's like leaving part of yourself behind in this new discovery of who you are now. So. All right, so let's do some 5-minute poses. This one is from Spirited Away. I'm also a newcomer to like Hayao Miyazaki. Hope I pronounced his name right. Hayao Miyazaki. And I watched this movie a few years ago for the first time, and I was like, this is definitely like an artist created movie. That was like one of my first thoughts. I was like, okay, if Hayao Miyazaki can make movies, all of us can create movies because this is a very, very like artist type of film. It's like it's very imaginative. The storyline is kind of all over the place. It's not all over the place, but it's like, how can I explain it? It's very fluid in the fact that, it follows a narrative, but it does so in a way that's, it's not as tight as if it was written by like someone who does like TV dramas or something. It's very it's fluid, and I think I said that word fluid a few times, but it's I like the fact that it's different. I like the fact that it's different, and it feels like a painting, like the whole thing, watching it take place or watching the movie is like looking at a painting. That's the best way that I can describe it. I don't know if someone else can describe it maybe better, but that's kind of how I feel when I look at it. So it feels very artist created to me. And that was one of the things that made me think like, I wish more artists were telling their stories and not being so intimidated by the writing process because you can tell good stories. You can tell stories that people will love if you will just give yourself a chance and let your crazy art brain kind of go for it and not be so intimidated. You know what I mean? You don't have to be so intimidated. You can, the noses are incredibly small. It's so crazy. Like so small. Okay. She looks terribly bored and sad, especially with the flowers. It's definitely like symbolism. Have you look at symbolism. Like, what is this? What is this shot saying? Someone with their arms folded like this, laying down back like that, with the flowers in their hand. It's giving casket. It's giving death. It's giving burial. She's like basically like bury me. I'm being buried. I am this child that's very unhappy and I'm basically dead. If not, if only dead inside, I'm dead. And that's exactly what this symbolism is doing here. And I want to challenge you to start to notice things like that. Notice when they're doing symbolism like this in films. That way you can incorporate these types of things. Like, how can you visually show what the character is thinking or feeling without saying anything? And that goes beyond just the character design, but into elements of the story where you're looking into, okay, this character is unhappy, so perhaps they are just, visually checked out. Very much visually checked out. They don't want to be wherever they are. They don't like being wherever they are. And so they're just deciding that, they're not going to participate in life. And this is the way that they're protesting. So, this is a really good example of that symbolism. But there's so many other things that kind of show who she is. She's like a young girl. We can see her backpack with her books and everything inside of it. We can see that she's in the back seat of a car. She's not in the front seat of the car. So that means that there's somebody that's got to be in the front seat. Somebody's got to be driving if the car is moving and it's not a Waymo. And we can just see this all happening. Okay. All right. So good, good, good. All right. So we're going on to our second image. All right. All right. So I don't think I answered any of the questions yet. How does the genre you love influence the way you draw? Let's see. Definitely, when I think about fantasy stories, I think I like to incorporate, I definitely love to incorporate animals and their role in storytelling, whether that's like creating fictional animal characters or creating like the idea of creating animal worlds. That's one way that I incorporate fantasy. I also like to incorporate like mythical creatures a lot, like spiritual creatures. I think is fun to play with. I think there can be like different ways that you can incorporate that. I think that that can be really fun and exciting to incorporate those types of things. Other things that I like to incorporate in my drawing is with folk tales, and I think we talked about folk tales, but folk tales are very what's the word? Kind of in the same category to me, almost as fantasy. It seems like they are kind of derivative of each other. Uh, I know that folk tales have been around for obviously centuries. And we incorporate them into how we make films and how scripts are written and stories, the way that they're told modernly. I think that definitely folktales always have this influence. And look at the way that this antagonist is in the frame. And it's very much reminiscent of the last category we were talking about, the thriller category, with this antagonist taking up the frame. Like literally her head is so massive that it's taking up half of the frame and it's even taking up even more than what I'm showing now. So let me see. Kind of move it over just a little bit because it's taking up even more than that. Okay, so she's like literally taking up this massive area, big earrings, everything, big hair, big everything, like just big-headed, creepy looking lady. She looks like a witch. Probably because she is some type of like spirit witch. And it's just like it's uncomfortable to look at her. I even had a hard time watching the movie because I didn't like looking at her face. I mean, take it as you want to, but I really didn't like looking at her face. I just didn't think it was appealing at all. And I don't know, you have to have a certain amount of, I don't know, I think it's up to the style of the creator, like how much appeal you even want to give your antagonists and your scary creatures because in one sense you want it to be intimidating, but how grotesque do you want your character to look that people can actually watch the screen? I think that's I think is a matter of style. Like some people will make the villain characters like really grotesque. Like if you look at a movie like Alien or Predator, and they just look like a dead insect or something. They just look really gross. And that's intentional. They want it to be hard to look at. But you can also have a antagonist that is not hard to look at all. Like let me see what like American Psycho. Like he's like a handsome guy, but he's a psychopath, but he's not hard to look at. He's just crazy. So, I mean, that's depends on the story, and I think it also depends on the style of the art director, of the director who wants to make it feel a certain type of way. I'm gonna make her actually a little bit closer and I think a little bit smaller too, because I think she's a little bit smaller in the frame. And we have this other character who's kind of, I don't know, he's kind of good and evil. He's like, I don't know, it's like a gluttonous spirit or like I don't know, he's kind of a strange being, this one over here. So he's not that intimidating until like he starts growing and then it's like, okay, what the hell is happening here? I don't even know. But he's a good little character, and you can think about types of characters that might be seem like they're pleasant, but maybe they're kind of overwhelming. There's characters like that where, maybe they seem fun, but if you get too close or too comfortable, they're really like intimidating or like they just don't understand humans or how to be safe around humans and they're really a threat. Those are different types of characters that you can create. Let's see. Anime, I think, is famous for creating food in their movies and showing lots of different types of food and things to eat in their movies. I think they've cornered the market in animation with that. And you see a little in some American animation, but really anime has taken the cake for that, so to speak. All right. So I think we passed our timer. I think it just didn't buzz on me. Yeah, it didn't. All right. So I'm gonna go to the next pose. I just wanna give this shade. All right. Okay, so let's save this. And the second question is, what visual elements immediately tell you what genre you're in? Well, for coming of age, usually you see a child. A child is the focus. Usually a child will be at the center, right? A child will be right dead center. We're going into a new genre here, fantasy. Fantasy features magical worlds, mythical creatures, or supernatural elements. What tells you you are in a fantasy by looking at this picture of Rhaenyra and her two dragons? I think it's pretty obvious. If her costume alone didn't tell you this is a fantasy, I mean, usually right off the gate, if you're watching something with medieval clothing, you're probably in a fantasy, right? Medieval clothing is a dead giveaway, even if I covered up the dragons. But obviously, I think dragons are the staple creature of a fantasy. Like, if there's going to be any character, any creature in a fantasy, dragons are like big one, a big at the top. I think because dragons are just so cool. I think like dinosaurs and sharks and those other ones that we see in thriller movies, they're just so incredibly dangerous, and that makes them automatically have that lure of intrigue and interest and like, oh, what is this character going to do? Is it going to hurt us? Is it going to be our friend? Like even like I think we all kind of have this, I think most of us, the nerds of us do, have this sort of a fantasy of being able to be friends with some and have a pet like this deadly creature. Like, who wouldn't want to have a deadly creature that trusts you and, lets you ride it and kill your enemies? Well, hopefully not to kill your enemies, but at least, go on adventures with. I think that everyone kind of is like, wow, that would be so cool. Obviously, that's not going to happen, but that would be pretty amazing. That's the idea. Um, and so Rhaenyra here is in House of the Dragons. It's a spin-off of Game of Thrones. It's based on one of the previous books, I believe, to Song of Ice and Fire. I don't know which one particularly it's based off of, but I believe that it's based off of one of the historical books because I think that George R. R. Martin wrote like some people like will deep dive, and I think that's a good thing. Deep dive into your stories, deep dive into who your characters are, their history, deep dive into like where they came from, their family lineage. I think like that's like if you can do that, then kudos to you. It will get you more invested in your own stories when you start to do your own research and do your own little like it's all your imagination. I think what artists really have a hard time is realizing that it's all your imagination, like all of it. Yes, of course you're gonna do like your if you're doing something that is based off of history, like historical things, even though it's fiction, it still has historical um inklings to it. It has like connections and ties. Yes, go ahead and do research. But, everything doesn't have to be like completely historically accurate because it's fiction, but you can use history to influence your story, to make it feel more real, to like see the way that these types of things actually worked. Kingdoms, and because all of that is actually real, the parts that are real, people that made the history books and lied in the history books for their own name, like Cersei, like, what was the famous line she said? History, you're the king, and history will be whatever you make it, whatever you say it is. So, I mean, it's like, seriously, who's gonna stop the king and say, like, I did this, put this in the books, put that in your book as one of my favorite film lines. That one is from Dances with Wolves. But, just saying, you can do a lot more than you probably think you can. You can create histories for your characters. You can create lineages for your characters. I'm actually going to make the head and neck a little bit smaller to fit more body. You can make lineages even like as detailed as you want them to be to make this his chest here. All right. And let's see if I have time to fit this other little backup singer in the back. But I think how else you can tell like the lighting is the location. Location is huge when you're talking about how to spot the genre. Like usually in coming of age, I think yeah, a lot of times you might see a regular neighborhood. You might see like the suburbs. You might see like some place where this kid is growing up. Um, this kid in Spirited Away was trapped like in the spirit world. But first you see like a domestic car, like a regular everyday car. So you might want to end in there in like a theme park. So like places where kids will be neighborhood, theme park, in their parents' minivan, whatever. And then you have this fantasy where, we're on top of this cliff, over, I can only assume it's like Ireland or Scotland or some place uh in the countryside of Europe, like Eastern Europe countryside is like obviously a pretty dead giveaway for fantasy. I think all of those Lord of the Rings, like you think about like the Hobbits and you think about I don't know, just about any fantasy I could think of. You're gonna see with princesses and kings and queens, it's like what we associate with, with those types of European folk tales. But there are folk tales from other cultures, so make sure that you explore those because that's gonna give you a lot more range for your fantasies when you start to look at the myths and story tales and legends from other cultures. Okay, so we're moving on. We're just gonna do one more. I kind of figured that we would just get to three different genres. I have a bonus one, but I figured we would only have time for three. All right, so let's go ahead and do our 5-minute pose on this one. Our lovely Daemon Targaryen. Daemon is fun, if nothing else. He's obviously the bad guy. I think it's good to have good bad guys. I think Game of Thrones is really good at doing that. I think in the original series, Jaime Lannister was more of this type of character, the kind that's like a rogue character. He's kind of good, but he's kind of bad at the same time. He's kind of like the tortured soul. And I actually have this in the sketch to story class. I have different types of characters, archetypes, and one of them is like the tortured, this tortured soul of this dark, dark, brooding soul. It's like he wants to be good, but he just can't help but being bad. And Damon is definitely that archetype. He just can't help himself from being bad, even though he wants to be loved and respected by his family. He just keeps kind of messing it up a little bit. And let's see. What was the question that I can? Well, actually, let's talk about fantasy a little bit more here and what you can do with fantasy. Like in this particular series, um, even though the dragons are kind of like the pets and they're like also like vehicles, but they're really like a weapon of war. That's kind of their main purpose. It's like, how many do I have? How many more can I get? How many people can we, make bend the knee because of our dragons? It's really like they're a tool for war. And when people are asking for a dragon, they don't want one as a pet. They don't want the baby one. They want the big one because that is like their weapon of mass destruction, basically. And we can even see with the characters that are responding to this warfare that they see. Um, like what's his name? I forget his name, but basically this knight that is basically scarred for life after seeing Dragon Warfare for the first time because he's seeing like the destruction. He's seeing all these people that are burnt. He's seeing like all the destruction to the villages. He's seeing how many of his men he's lost. And he's just like, I don't know, this dragon stuff is kind of for the birds. I don't think I want to do this anymore. So he's kind of like lost his mojo in many senses of the word. So definitely in this particular story that the dragons are more of like the the weapons. When you would see like a film such as How to Train Your Dragon, I think they're more like they do have like the people that want to use them for their power, but I think the idea is that you can have this personal bond with the dragon, and it's more like your friend and your buddy, like your Pokemon, so to speak. And even in Pokemon, there's the dragon type Pokemons, and they're more like your companion, even though you're using it to fight battles and stuff too, but it still feels like it's like you create a bond with this character, with this creature, and it becomes sort of like your buddy. So there's different ways to look at that. How can you tell what you're looking at when you see something big like this too? Colors, I think if you've ever noticed, they use a lot of muted colors. Even the red is like a muted red. And I think that's very intentional. I think that is to correlate with the idea that, you know, many colors weren't able to be reproduced at that time. Didn't have the advanced types of dyes and staining that we have now. They were using organic materials like flowers, rocks, different types of plants. Like this is where they were getting all of their colors for to weave and to paint or to design with. And so even if you look at art from that time period, from like Middle Ages especially, the artwork is more muted because of that, because they didn't have all those colors. So think of things like that. They're using that intentionally, like this limited um saturation, limited brightness in their color palette. So I think that's really important to notice how colors are used in different genres and what informs those things, such as like the time period. Okay, now we just have a couple minutes left, and I want to talk about our challenge. Uh, So our challenge, I'm gonna just have to skip over this last little part. If I have time, I'll maybe just tell you what those are. But our challenge for this week is called a genre swap, okay? So it's the genre, oops. It's the genre swap, okay? So the objective is to discover how genre shapes storytelling by transforming a familiar scene into a completely different genre. So what you're going to do is choose one scene from a screenplay, and you can pick a film that you're familiar with. There's going to be a lot of them, and I'm going to give you a resource for that. So you're going to pick one scene from a screenplay, and you're going to imagine that exact scene belongs to an entirely different genre. So you're going to swap the genre. It's kind of a fun little game. And you're going to depict that in 1 to 2 storyboard thumbnails. So you don't have to like make a thumbnail out the whole entire scene. Just, pick 1 or 2 thumbnails just showing a completely different thing happening. And your challenge is to recreate the scene by changing a character, the setting, or the mood. And that's what's going to show the new genre. And it's going to match the new genre while keeping the scene's same basic purpose. An example would be like in The Lion King. So that's an adventure drama. It's an animated adventure drama, but it's definitely an adventure drama. And the scene would be the stampede scene. And so the new genre would be comedy. So the take is that Mufasa, the biggest celebrity in Pride Rock, is being chased by rabid fans of various animal species for an autograph. So just imagine like the whole stampede scene and Mufasa's being chased, but instead of being chased by this stampede of wildebeest, he's being chased by rabid fans that just want autograph or a selfie. So it becomes a comedy. He doesn't die. He just is like smitten with fans. I know it's silly, but I think it's pretty fun. Okay, and so our resources that I've given you for this are Script Slug. So you can go to the website is www.scriptslug.com, and they have a ton of, let me see if I can show you right now. ScriptSlug has tons of scripts, and you can pick obviously ones that you know. ones that, and if it will, it works very simply. Just click on it and okay, close. Thank you. And you just go to read. And it will literally just give you, it will tell you the project, the screenplay, and if it was based on a novel, it will tell you that. So if it's adapted. And the reason why I want you to do this from a screenplay rather than just picking a movie is it really helpful to actually see screenplays the way they're set up. It helps you to see like the pacing, the words that are used to visually describe, because you're going to be doing the same thing. You want to learn how professionals are doing it so that you can kind of say, oh yeah, I remember how they worded this scene. So it helps if you've actually seen the film or if you read a screenplay and then watch the film so you can see how the translation goes from script, from actual words into the story. So that's going to be really helpful for you. The next resource I have is famous film storyboards and it's on Board Panda. I choose film storyboards because it's really in the same way that animation used to be done, which is a broader storyboard. Like storyboards now are more for the motion. They're more like it's really like animated now for animation. Like you're gonna see like the images are so close together that you can actually see the character making the motion. I don't want you to do that. I want you to think broader into like, all right, what is the idea of this scene rather than how is the character going to move around this scene? Is like what is the idea of this scene? So this one is actually from live action films, and I think it's gonna be a great resource for you. So the website is boardpanda.com, directors dash draw dash storyboards dash movie dash scenes. Okay, so you can even take a little screenshot of that right now, or you can just probably Google Board Panda 25 storyboards of famous movies, show how they looked before coming to life. And you can just go through this and kind of see these storyboards and even like, look, this is how a director, this is, was made by a screen by like like a filmmaker because like in like I've seen like film students and they're doing their storyboards and they have no idea how to draw, but they're still like planning their shots. And that's the whole idea. You're planning the shots, you're planning like the frame, like what is this scene going to look like? All right. And that's more of the idea. These obviously are professional storyboard artists doing something like this. That's a professional storyboard artist. All right, but this, I want you to look at it because it's going to help you to kind of depict the idea of the scene rather than trying to get all the motion. So this is Gladiator, right? So this is a great, great resource, and I want you to have that. So I'm sharing that with you. And you can share this in our Discord. So if you take a little shot of this QR code and go to Event Art and Photos channel, you can share your challenge for week 2. I am excited to see them. I think this is going to be really fun. So remember Script Slug and Board Panda famous movie storyboards. And please, please, please remember this is our exciting, exciting thing that we're doing is that Sketch the Story Creative Writing for Visual Artists is now on Kickstarter. It's going to be amazing class. This is only like a preview of like the types of things I'm sharing with you. I'm doing this in sketch format, but really we take a deep dive into like storytelling inspiration, getting into like writing out scenes and drawing out scenes first to take away that intimidation of writing. And that's why I specifically made for visual artists because we're doing the sketching first and then we're translating it into like, all right, let's think about what's happening here. Let's start describing this scene in words so that we can translate that into a story format. So this is an amazing resource. I spent a lot of time developing it. I'm really passionate about helping artists to create their own content, and that's exactly the purpose of this. Create your own content so you're not stuck only telling other people's stories and wishing that you can tell your own. This is to empower you to tell your own stories. So I want to thank you so much for joining me for the week 2 of Sketch to Story drawing workshops, and I will see you again real soon. But until I see you next time, be grateful, live balanced, and be yourself. Bye bye.